In Nairobi. Aldrin, good afternoon to you once again. Clashes with police, poor turnout at voting stations and a polarized nation. Just some of what we're seeing amidst these very contentious elections. But Aldrin, also an unconfirmed report that at least one person has died.
Yes, that's the unconfirmed reports that we're receiving at this moment. One person has been killed, apparently during a protest that happened in Kisumu earlier on. We understand that this person died in hospital, but as you have indicated that we haven't been able, as the SABC, to independently verify these reports that we are receiving at this point. But certainly it must fly in the face of what President Uhuru Kenyatta asked for earlier on, even when he spoke about that peaceful elections would be the best gift that he would receive as he's celebrating his birthday, turning 56 today, because you had these violent protests that have been happening in areas such as Kisumu, as well as Kibera, where I was earlier on, where police had fired tear gas to try and disperse these angry protesters, angry residents, people who are supporters of NASA, who have really heeded this call by Raila Odinga to stay away. Odinga earlier on this morning also tweeting and calling on his protesters, again reiterating on them, saying that they must stay away, also calling on a defiance campaign, saying that Kenyans must boycott buying goods and services, as he believes that these are people who support Uhuru Kenyatta and Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. He says this is an illegitimate regime. That is what he has classified this government as. But of course, as I've indicated, that these running battles between the police and protesters have been continuing, and it has been a poor turnout at some of the voting stations and the polling stations that we have visited around Nairobi, as well as in the area in the area that we were in earlier on this morning, where we spoke to one of the voters who are asked really that if you consider that if there is these turnouts at the 290 constituencies and the IEBC declares that the election was valid and the results are valid, that Uhuru Kenyatta, if it's anything to go by, it's a foregone conclusion that he will be the victor. Will he accept that Uhuru Kenyatta has been duly elected by those who turned out to cast a ballot as the president of Kenya? He says that they will never recognize Uhuru Kenyatta as the president of Kenya. So one can only imagine what sort of solution the country would need to sit down and find a solution and ask themselves where to from here. Earlier on, Sarakimani was with President Uhuru Kenyatta, who also cast his ballot, and really the president reiterating this call, saying that people must come out in their numbers. But where I was, it was a poor turnout.
Indeed, it's a day of contrast, Aldrin, where we were, thousands of people came out to vote, and we were in central Kenya, which is President Kenyatta's strongholds. And there, people came out to vote, a lot of them enthusiastic, some of them saying they're coming out to prove that on August 8th, they had indeed voted for President Kenyatta, and August 8th, that is the election that the Supreme Court nullified in its ruling on the 1st of September, indicating that the IEBC, that's the Electoral Commission here in Kenya, committed illegalities and irregularities, and so they ordered a fresh election in 60 days. We are just a bit close to the 60th day, because on the 31st of October, then we would have reached the 60th day. Now, Aldrin asked me what solution the country has been putting on the table to what seems like a political stalemate, even as the country went to an election. A lot of people have suggested dialogue, national dialogue, and we asked President Kenyatta if indeed he would be willing to start dialoguing with the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who has boycotted these elections. And he said there is a matter to talk about after the elections, but he admits that the country is deeply divided, and as any leader, and he says this, as any responsible leader, I will be willing to reach out to everybody. And we saw him do that after the August 8th elections. In most parts of the country where Uhuru Kenyatta and the Jubilee Party enjoy support, people have come out to vote. But in areas where we see the opposition enjoying support, either people have stayed off or we are having protests. We will be keeping you updated. Polls close in about 4 hours now, and then it will be the process of counting. We will be keeping you updated from a polling station where we will witness the counting and finally the tallying of the votes. From Nairobi, it's back to you in studio.
Kenya, Sarah Kimani, thank you so much, live from Kenya. Our reporter Alvin Sampier with our foreign correspondent there, keeping us up to date with those very contentious elections in Kenya.